Today, Bitcoin surges to within striking distance of reclaiming $70,000. FTX finds a buyer for part of its stake in AI startup Anthropic, and Chris Kuiper of Fidelity Digital Assets shares his 2024 outlook for Bitcoin ETFs. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Brandon Gomez. The crypto market roaring back over the weekend and in the green to kick off the week. By noon Eastern, Bitcoin climbed more than 6% and traded just under $70,000. Ether rose 5.5% and Solana jumped a whopping 9.4%. Volatility is still hovering at a 2024 high for Bitcoin. That cryptocurrency has rebounded from the $63,000 level it slumped back to on Friday. Okay, let's talk about today's top stories. The U.S. civil fraud trial against Terraform Labs co-founder Do Kwon kicks off today in New York. The SEC will make its case to the court that Do Kwon and Terraform Labs allegedly defrauded investors by marketing crypto securities in the form of Luna. And when Luna eventually plummeted to zero, along with the stablecoin UST, the SEC says that collapse led to devastating losses for investors to the tune of $40 billion. Notably, though, Do Kwon won't be there for the start of this trial. Why? Well, he's still in Montenegro. According to Bloomberg, Do Kwon has been released from prison, but is still waiting a final destination for his extradition, either to the US or South Korea. The country's Supreme Court previously ordered the crypto entrepreneur back to his home country of South Korea, but a last-minute challenge from a lower court put that decision on hold until the Supreme Court could weigh in once again. Next, a Binance executive has escaped custody in Nigeria just as the nation's government filed tax evasion charges against the crypto exchange. According to local media reports, Nigeria's Federal Inland Revenue Service filed 4 new charges relating to tax evasion in a high court. Those charges include non-payment of VAT, which is value-added tax, failure to submit tax returns, and more. As part of those charges, 2 senior executives for the company were taken into custody, but now one has escaped. A Binance spokesperson told CNBC it was made aware that Nadeem Anjarwalla is no longer in Nigerian custody and that the company was working collaboratively with Nigerian authorities to quickly resolve this issue. You could read more about those new tax charges and Anjarwalla's escape at CNBC.com. Finally, FTX has found a buyer for its stake in AI startup Anthropic. The doomed crypto exchange bought an 8% stake in the company 3 years ago for $500 million. It's now worth more than $1 billion. Today, bankruptcy filings show 24 buyers have come together to buy most of those shares at around $880 million, including the United Arab Emirates and Jane Street, one of Sam Bankman-Fried's former employers. The sale of this stake is a major part of making FTX customers whole, as part of the firm seeking to exit bankruptcy. All right, for our main story, Crypto World's Tanea McKeel spoke with Chris Kuiper, Director of Research for Fidelity Digital Assets, at Bitcoin Investor Day last Friday. They spoke about the current volatility in crypto, and he shared his 2024 outlook for spot Bitcoin ETFs.
New all-time highs are back for Bitcoin, but so is volatility. What do you make of the current state of things in the market?
Yeah, so obviously we've had a very volatile more than a year. 2023, we were up 155% in Bitcoin, and now we've kind of rocketed out of the gate once again, up 50% year to date. So I think what you're seeing is after this long bear market, we're once again seeing the cycle turn for a number of reasons, and a lot of people are once again rediscovering Bitcoin. We've obviously had the approval of the exchange-traded products, which are helping with demand. And then you have things like the upcoming Bitcoin halving, which people are now turning towards.
We are coming up on the end of the quarter here, which of course kicked off with the launch of all of these new Bitcoin ETFs. What would you say the impact of these new products as a whole has had on the market, on the action, the price action, the investor behavior?
Yeah, so the ETFs were very interesting because we did get kind of the classic Wall Street buy the rumors, sell the news. The day they were approved, we got almost a 20% pullback, and everyone said, maybe not a big deal. And then since then, I've been absolutely very wrong about this. I thought this would be kind of a slow burn for these things, that we would get demand as people started to put them into their portfolios. Our RIAs became aware of them. They were talking to their clients about them. I thought this would take years, which it still will, in the long term. But in the immediate term, we've seen a huge flow you see this in the trading volumes as well as the actual money flows into these products. And so that's providing a massive source of demand, which I think is helping to drive the price up right now.
And so what about, in terms of the rate of adoption going forward? Is it just time and investor education. With both of those things, what does the rest of the year look like to you? Is it all up from here in terms of the adoption of these Bitcoin ETFs, or do you see that pattern sort of changing throughout the year?
Yeah, the pattern we see with adoption is ebbs and flows. Like you get, and it follows the price. If you look at the price on a log chart, you see the price move up really quickly and then have massive drawdowns. And I think adoption is the same. The price moves up, it gets more people interested, they become educated, they say, maybe I want to hold some of this for the long term. But then, of course, there's also traders and speculators that whipsaw the asset around. But each time you go up, you draw down, you go up again, you don't keep going back down. And I think adoption's the same. A new wave of people come in, and then those people are now educated. They now understand it. And then another cohort of people come in, and now they understand it. And so I would expect the same pattern to continue through the rest of the year, and really, multiple cycles after this.
You mentioned the halving, a key catalyst that we've been talking about. Seems like everyone is talking about it, and I think that's so interesting. 4 years ago, unlike 4 years ago, it seems like everybody knows exactly what the halving is and what historically its impact on the Bitcoin price has been. How, if at all, is this year's halving different to you? It's a completely different market than it was 4 years ago. And of course, past performance is not exactly indicative of future profits, but how is this year's halving different, if at all?
Yeah, so the big difference is we've hit a new all-time high before the halving has even taken place. So that's never been done before. Obviously, we just talked about the exchange-traded products are probably playing some role there. But the other thing is that, this time every time we have a halving, it's of course half as much, right? And so the supply is going to get cut in half again, but it's not as much as before. So I think there's some debate as to whether it's going to have as big of an impact as before, or whether the previous halvings had a much bigger impact because they had kind of this supply shock. So maybe not as big of a supply shock this time around, but I think we have a bigger demand shock this time. So we'll see how those two kind of play against each other.
I want to talk about allocation, something I'm hearing a lot about at this event. What does, if you could, simplify it, what does a, quote, proper Bitcoin allocation look like for retail investors, for institutional investors, and I think particularly on the institutional side, we've always said between 1% and 3%, but I think lately this year, with all of this new interest in the market, I have been hearing about bigger allocations by institutional investors. So I don't know anecdotally if you are having those types of conversations with people at all, but what do those conversations look like, and what's your view on this?
Yeah, so our analysis has shown that basically a little goes a long way, at least historically. And of course, past is no indication of future, but you only need just a little bit, those few percentage points, to greatly increase your returns. And even though your volatility goes up a little bit, you're more than compensated for that. And also over the long term, Bitcoin has a very low correlation to these other assets. So it actually doesn't increase your drawdown that much because you're adding something that zigs when everything else zags over the long term. In terms of the allocation, it all depends on the investor, of course. Whether people are taking bigger positions, hearing that anecdotally as well, and I think that's highly correlated to how much work they've done in the space, how much they've invested in terms of understanding it, understanding the asset class. That's what's going to give them more conviction, and that's also what gives people more conviction when they inevitably see a drawdown or the price drop.
To finish, what do you think about corporates that hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet? We talk about Tesla, or at least we used to. MicroStrategy is sort of the big one right now, but what's your view on that as a strategy?
Yeah, so I think obviously it depends on the corporation. It's not going to make sense for all of them, but I think the value proposition is Bitcoin is a uncorrelated asset. It's an emerging store of value, and investing, especially for a corporation, if they have to hold their cash or other investments for the long term, it's all a relative gain. And so they're looking at other things, the traditional assets of treasuries or bonds. And especially when we had high inflation, they were getting a negative return on that. They're saying this thing is melting. This thing is going, I'm losing purchasing power. Why not we try to diversify that into something that is becoming more scarce by the day, especially with the halving, as a potential hedge against that. And so that's why I think it could make sense for a lot of corporations out there.
Okay, that's all we have today for Crypto World. We'll be back here again tomorrow. We'll see you then.